What if the heaviness you've been carrying wasn't even yours to carry? What if it had nothing to do with your life, your choices, or even your past? What if you've been under attack all along and never knew it? This is the energy war you didn't know you're in. You see, you've been taught to treat your thoughts as private whispers, fleeting and harmless. But science and ancient spiritual teachings tell a different story. Every thought is a broadcast, a signal, a pulse of intention and frequency that leaves your mind and enters a field much larger than you were ever told exists. And in that field, there are receivers, forces, people, patterns, ready to pick up what you're unconsciously sending out. You're not just thinking. You're tuning your energy, you're shaping your environment, and if you're not careful, you're giving others the remote control to your inner power. But what if the first place this war shows up isn't in the world around you, but in the quietest part of you? There's a reason you can't explain why certain rooms feel heavy, why some memories make your body shut down, why you feel watched even when you're alone. That's not just anxiety, that's not just being sensitive, that's energetic interference, and your mind is the first place it hits. The battlefield isn't out there in the world. It's not in politics or in headlines or even in the words people say to you. The real war begins the moment you wake up, when your thoughts are most vulnerable, and continues in the background as you go about your day. Answering emails, scrolling through your phone, smiling through a conversation that doesn't feel real. It's subtle, it's quiet, and it's relentless. You're not just thinking, you're broadcasting weapons. That's not metaphor, that's physics. Your thoughts carry electrical charge, your emotions modulate magnetic fields, your beliefs are scripts running in the background of your biology. The war you're in doesn't need bombs, it just needs your unconscious participation. And the truth is, it's been winning. Not because you're weak, but because no one taught you how to guard the gates of your own mind. So pause for a moment. Really pause. Feel your body, the tightness in your shoulders, the way your stomach holds onto worry. The tension in your jaw that you thought was just from grinding your teeth. That's not just physical. That's where the war has landed. That's where it's been living. You've been under siege, not just by others, but by thoughts that were never truly yours, picked up from a society that thrives on your distraction, your doubt, your disconnection. But today, something different begins. Today, we lift the veil and name the invisible for what it is. Today, you learn how to see the signals, decode the patterns, and reclaim the space of your own mind. Because once you become aware of the field, you stop being a target. You start becoming a force. This is the energy war you didn't know you're in. And yes, every thought counts. The invisible battlefield. Why your mind is the first target. You were never taught to guard your thoughts because no one ever told you they could be attacked. Not with words, not with visible force, but with something far more subtle. Frequency. You see, the true battlefield isn't made of soil and blood. It's made of vibration. It lives in the quiet spaces of your inner world, where thoughts arise like whispers and settle into patterns that shape everything you feel, believe, and become. And most of the time, this battlefield goes unnoticed because you were born into it. You've been in it so long, it feels like reality. But let's strip it down to what it really is. Your mind is not just a thinker, it's a transmitter, a receiver, a living, breathing field of electrical and magnetic signals. Every single thought you have, every flicker of emotion sends out a frequency. And in a world saturated with interference, those frequencies are constantly interacting with fields you can't see, people's unresolved pain, places heavy with memories, collective emotions pulsing through digital space. You think you're just having a bad day, but what if your system is absorbing signals it never chose to receive? When you walk into a room and suddenly feel a wave of anxiety, that's not just mood. When you leave a conversation feeling emotionally drained, that's not just personality mismatch. These are energetic events. Your mind, when unguarded, becomes the first point of entry. And the things that enter, they don't knock. They slip in through your attention. They hijack your focus. They loop the same thought over and over until you no longer remember what it feels like to be calm without reason. And then comes the slow unraveling, that quiet fatigue that no amount of sleep seems to fix. That restless hum in your nervous system that makes peace feel like a memory. You tell yourself to push through, to stay positive, to snap out of it. But it doesn't work, because this isn't just about psychology, it's about vibration. You are not just tired. You are energetically porous, and something is moving through you that doesn't belong. Here's the piece no one told you. Energy doesn't ask for permission. It simply follows invitation. And your thoughts, those tiny, invisible currents, are the invitations. When you fixate on fear, you tune to fear. When you ruminate on anger, you vibrate at the level of anger. This isn't punishment. It's physics. And the cost isn't just emotional, it's vibrational exhaustion. The kind of fatigue that creeps into your bones, that turns your purpose into a fog, that makes your own intuition go quiet. So you start to question yourself. Maybe I'm just too sensitive. Maybe I'm broken. Maybe I'm not strong enough. But none of that is true. You're not broken. You're just inside a battlefield no one prepared you for. And now, because you're here, because you're listening, you begin to see it. Your mind is the first target because your thoughts are the foundation. They are the code from which your entire reality is built. If someone or something can disrupt that code, they don't have to control your body. They don't even need your belief. They just need you unaware. But you're not unaware anymore. And that changes everything. And here's the twist no one talks about. Energy vampires exist, but they're not what you think. When people hear energy vampire, they picture a person. Someone toxic, someone loud, controlling, draining. And yes, sometimes that's true, but most of the time, the real drain isn't coming from someone else. It's coming from what's already living inside you. The loops, the memories, the emotions you revisit over and over, thinking they're yours to hold, when really they're just frequencies left unresolved. Frequencies that feed on your attention like it's fuel. You wake up, and before your feet even touch the ground, your mind starts running through everything that went wrong yesterday. That one conversation that didn't sit right, that mistake you made 5 years ago that still stings, that thing you're afraid might happen next week. It all feels small, but it adds up. These aren't just thoughts, they're activations. Every memory that triggers guilt, every fear that spirals into anxiety, every what if that ends in dread, is a siphon. Slowly, silently, it pulls at your field, lowers your frequency, and weakens your inner clarity. And here's the wild part. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between a real threat and a remembered one. So when you think of something painful, your body reacts like it's happening now. Your heart races, your breath shortens, your cells tighten, and cortisol floods your bloodstream. Over time, that chemical stress becomes your baseline. You don't even notice it anymore. You just live with this quiet buzz of fatigue that never really leaves. That's not normal. That's vibrational depletion disguised as personality. But this goes deeper, because it's not just about old wounds. It's about the patterns we've normalized, the way we stay busy to avoid silence, the way we replay conversations in our heads to feel in control, the way we anticipate rejection before we've even been seen. These patterns aren't just habits, they're access points, and the longer we live in them, the more they consume, not in one big dramatic moment, but in a slow, steady drain that leaves you wondering why joy feels so far away, even when nothing is wrong. And yet, there's no shame in this, because this is what no one ever taught us. That thought is a doorway, that emotion is a magnet, that memory, when unhealed, becomes a loop, an energetic script that plays beneath your awareness and keeps pulling your frequency down. You're not broken for having these patterns. You're not failing for being tired. You're simply in a vibrational feedback loop that needs your awareness to shift. The real energy vampires, they're the moments you revisit without compassion, the fears you feed without question, the stories you tell yourself about who you are, stories that never came from you to begin with, and perhaps the most draining of all, the expectation that you have to be okay all the time, even when your soul is asking you to pause, to feel, to heal. So maybe it's time to stop looking for enemies outside. Maybe it's time to see the places where your energy leaks from the inside. Because the moment you recognize them, not judge, not fight, just recognize, is the moment the loop begins to break. And energy that was once draining begins to return. But some loops aren't just mental. They're energetic traps we never saw coming. The thought loop that weakens your field. There's something deeply exhausting about hearing the same thought inside your head, day after day. It's like living with background noise that never turns off. You can carry on with your life, go to work, talk to people, check the boxes, but underneath it all, there's a line of thinking, quiet but persistent, that keeps repeating itself. And over time, that repetition doesn't just wear on your mind, it weakens your entire energetic field. Your aura, your vibrational field, isn't just a poetic idea. It's real, it's measurable, it's alive, and it responds to your internal environment the same way your skin responds to weather. Thoughts that repeat without resolution act like static, disturbing the coherence of your field, distorting the signals you send and receive. It's like having a radio stuck between stations. The more it tries to tune in, the more interference it picks up. And the longer you stay in that frequency, the more exhausted you feel, without knowing why. Maybe you've noticed it. The way one negative thought can spiral into 10. How self-doubt, once it sneaks in, suddenly takes over your entire perception. It doesn't matter how many good things are happening around you. If your mental field is saturated with fear or shame or scarcity, those frequencies override everything else. That's not because you're negative. It's because unbroken loops are like open circuits. They pull energy continuously without giving anything back, and the body feels it. You start forgetting things. You feel foggy. Your sleep is restless. Your body tenses without cause. These aren't random symptoms. They're energetic feedback. Your system is trying to tell you something is stuck. Something is repeating. And that repetition is draining the core of who you are. Here's what's even more revealing. Most of these loops weren't chosen. They were inherited, picked up from childhood, from environments that taught you fear was safety, that love had to be earned, that your worth depended on what others saw in you. Those beliefs, once internalized, don't just live in your mind, they live in your frequency. And unless you interrupt the loop, they keep playing, quietly, relentlessly, invisibly. So how do you break the loop? Not by forcing yourself to think positive, not by fighting every negative thought with logic. That only feeds the loop more. You break it by becoming aware of it, naming it, sitting with it, not as truth, but as a pattern. You begin to notice how it enters, when it speaks, what it wants, and then with compassion, not urgency, you shift. You choose a new tone, a new breath, a new path, because you are not the loop. You are the field the loop moves through. And the moment you reclaim that field is the moment the pattern begins to lose power. The unseen attack, when emotional patterns are weaponized. Some wounds don't scream, they hum, low and steady, like a background frequency your body learns to ignore, until it starts making you sick. You might not remember where it started, you might not have words for it, but somewhere along the line, emotions that were meant to move through you got trapped inside you. And that's when something shifts. That's when feelings stop being signals and start becoming weapons. Guilt is one of the quietest. It disguises itself as responsibility, as empathy, as love. But deep down, it carries the frequency of self-punishment. It says, I did something wrong, even when you didn't. And the longer it stays unspoken, the more it turns inward, corroding confidence, dulling your voice, shrinking your presence. Resentment works differently. It freezes time. It holds you in a moment where you felt powerless and keeps replaying it in your emotional field like a glitch in your nervous system. And then there's shame, the heaviest of them all. Not the kind that says, I made a mistake, but the kind that says, I am the mistake. That kind doesn't just drain your energy, it rewires your identity. You're told to let it go, to move on, to not let it affect you. But emotional energy doesn't just disappear because logic says so. It stays. It embeds. It lives inside your frequency, echoing in every interaction, every reaction, every relationship you struggle to maintain. And what most don't realize is that these trapped emotions aren't just painful, they're magnetic. They attract situations that match their tone. They reinforce patterns that keep you in the same loops. And the more they accumulate, the easier it is for external energy to attach to you, because your field becomes less coherent, more fragmented, and more susceptible to influence. This is how the emotional matrix sustains itself, not through big dramatic events, but through subtle, invisible conditioning that trains you to internalize pain and call it personality. You don't even realize you're operating from emotional programming until life starts to feel like a series of recurring scenes, different characters, same wounds. That's not coincidence. That's unhealed energy turning your emotions into code and running your life from the background. But there's a way out, and it doesn't start by fighting the emotion. It starts by feeling it, fully, honestly, without shame. Not to drown in it, but to acknowledge it. Because acknowledgement is frequency repair. It tells your nervous system, you're safe now, you can stop bracing. And once your body stops bracing, your field begins to open, space is created, clarity enters, and what once felt like an emotional weapon becomes a guide. You're not fragile because you feel deeply, you're just sensitive to the battlefield no one else is talking about. And the moment you begin to see your emotional patterns not as flaws, but as frequencies, is the moment you stop being a target and start becoming a healer. But what if everything you've been told about staying positive is actually what's keeping you stuck? Why positive thinking doesn't save you, and what actually does? You've probably heard it 1,000 times. Just think positive. As if a good thought could cancel a broken feeling, as if a smile could silence an ache that lives deeper than words. But here's the truth. Positive thinking, when forced, doesn't lift your vibration, it fractures it. Because when your mind says, I'm fine, but your body is screaming, I'm not, that split creates static, and static weakens your field. This isn't about being negative. It's about being real. Your energy doesn't respond to language. It responds to coherence. That means your thoughts, your emotions, your breath, and your body have to be speaking the same language. Otherwise, it's like trying to tune an orchestra where every instrument is playing a different song. On the surface, you might be saying affirmations, meditating, visualizing the life you want. But if your nervous system is still in survival mode, if your heart is still carrying grief you haven't named, then all that positivity becomes noise, not power. Coherence isn't about perfection. It's not about having only high-frequency emotions or becoming immune to fear. It's about honesty, alignment. It's the quiet power that emerges when your mind stops performing and starts listening. When your thoughts stop trying to override your emotions and begin holding space for them, that's when your energy field begins to repair. That's when you stop vibrating from what you wish was true and start vibrating from what's real. You don't need to fake the light. You just need to return to your truth. One of the most misunderstood truths in spiritual practice is this: your frequency rises not when you suppress pain, but when you integrate it. And integration takes presence. It takes the willingness to sit in silence, not to escape, but to feel. To let your breath slow enough that your body remembers it's safe, to let your awareness expand enough that your wounds begin to loosen. This isn't a mental game. This is energetic hygiene. This is vibrational integrity. Your field knows the difference. You can't fake coherence, but you can return to it. You can close your eyes, place a hand over your heart, and ask yourself, what am I really feeling right now? Not what you're supposed to feel, not what you think you should feel, but what's actually there. Because that question, asked with compassion, begins to reset everything. So no, you don't need to force yourself to think positive. You need to feel present. You need to breathe where it hurts and soften where you've tensed for too long. Because that's what clears the static. That's what realigns your field. And when you come into coherence, your energy becomes a shield, one that doesn't block life out, but filters what no longer belongs in. The hidden weapon. How awareness redirects the battlefield. Most people think of awareness as something passive. A soft gaze, a fleeting moment of presence between thoughts. But real awareness, conscious, grounded, embodied awareness, is anything but passive. It's a force, a weapon. A frequency sharp enough to cut through distortion and still enough to silence the noise. It doesn't yell, it doesn't fight, it sees. And that's what makes it powerful. In the middle of an energetic spiral, when your thoughts are running and your emotions are tight and your breath is shallow, awareness is the only thing that can intervene without creating more chaos. It's the only force that doesn't need to fix anything. It just notices. And in that noticing, the loop begins to unravel. Not because you forced it to, but because you stopped feeding it unconsciously. Here's how it works. The moment you become fully present, just for 3 seconds, your entire vibrational field shifts, your breath anchors, your thoughts slow, your heart rate recalibrates. It doesn't take hours of meditation or spiritual perfection. It just takes a pause deep enough to change the rhythm. Imagine your thoughts like a train moving at full speed. Awareness doesn't slam the brakes. It steps off the track, it lets the train pass, and in that space something opens. Try this. Place both feet on the ground, feel the weight of your body, let your jaw unclench. Notice the temperature of the air. That's awareness. Not thinking about presence, but entering it, viscerally, sensorially, without analysis. It's that moment of stillness where you realize, I'm here, I'm safe, I can feel again. This is what I call vibrational interruption. A moment so rooted in the now that the energetic script can't continue. You've stopped rehearsing pain, you've stopped bracing for what hasn't happened, and suddenly there's space. Real space. The kind your nervous system has been begging for but didn't know how to find. And the more you practice this, not as a technique but as a way of being, the more your energy begins to self-correct. You start catching the loop sooner. You start noticing the emotion as it rises, not after it explodes. You begin to move through life not as someone reacting to everything, but as someone guiding your frequency with quiet precision. That's not detachment, that's mastery. Awareness is the weapon no one taught you to use. It's subtle, it's silent, but it changes the battlefield entirely, because when you become the observer of the energy, you stop being its prisoner. But what does this look like in real life, outside the theories, in the backstage of a soul quietly collapsing? Real story. How a woman reclaimed her energy after 17 years of collapse. For nearly 2 decades, she lived in a fog, not the kind that makes headlines, the kind that hides inside ordinary days, quiet, dense, exhausting. Every morning she woke up feeling already behind, already burdened, already depleted. Doctors said it was depression. Friends called it burnout. But deep down, she knew something else was happening, something the world didn't have language for, something that wasn't just in her head, but in her field. Her name is Emily, and for 17 years, she learned to survive inside a body that felt like it wasn't hers. Her energy came in flashes, short-lived bursts that never lasted. She did everything right: therapy, medication, yoga, gratitude journals. But still, the heaviness lingered. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that her soul was leaking through cracks she couldn't see. The turning point didn't come from a book or a breakthrough. It came from a sound, a simple vibration. She was lying in bed, listening to a recording of low harmonic frequencies, tones designed to calm the nervous system. And for the first time in years, her mind didn't wander. Her body didn't resist. She didn't fall asleep, but something fell away, a layer, a pressure, a static that had been with her so long, she forgot it wasn't supposed to be there. That moment led her to a new kind of practice: vibrational unprogramming. It wasn't about thinking differently. It was about tuning differently. She began combining frequency-based meditation with emotional inquiry, using sound as a way to break the mental loop and anchor awareness in the body. Slowly, gently, things began to shift. Not dramatically, not all at once, but clearly. She started noticing when the collapse would begin, before it consumed her. She could trace it to a single thought, a subtle tightening in her chest, a memory she hadn't healed. And with that awareness, she stopped spiraling. She started interrupting. She began speaking to her own energy like it was sacred, because it was. And over time, her field changed. Her body responded. Her life, once defined by depletion, became defined by return. Not return to who she was before the collapse, but to who she was beneath it. The version of herself that had always been intact, just buried beneath too much noise. Emily's story isn't a miracle. It's a reminder that your exhaustion is not your identity, that your field, no matter how fractured, remembers how to heal, and that the smallest shift in awareness, the smallest act of presence, can begin the unraveling of years of energetic forgetting. You're not lazy, you're not broken. You're not too much or not enough. You're just carrying signals that were never yours to hold. And the moment you recognize that is the moment everything begins to return. You were never weak, just surrounded by unseen frequencies. There's a moment, quiet, unmistakable, when you realize that what you thought was weakness was actually overwhelm, that what you labeled as failure was actually saturation. You weren't giving up. You were absorbing too much noise, too much pressure, too many vibrations that didn't belong to you. And no one told you how to filter them, so you blamed yourself. But what if the truth is simpler than we make it? What if you were never fragile, only sensitive to frequencies that others had learned to ignore? What if your exhaustion wasn't evidence of lack, but of depth? You were not collapsing because you couldn't handle life. You were collapsing because you were processing what most people never stop to feel. Your energy is not fragile. It's responsive. It reflects the environment, the unspoken emotions in a room, the heaviness in someone's voice, the subtle shift in atmosphere when something is off. And when you live in a world that moves too fast, talks too loud, and rewards numbness over sensitivity, your system starts to shut down, not because you're weak, but because your nervous system is intuitive, and it's been trying to protect you in the only way it knows how, by dimming your light to survive the storm. But you're starting to see it now, the frequencies, the patterns, the loops, and once you see, you can't unsee. You begin to catch the tone behind someone's words. You notice the vibration in your own body when a thought repeats itself. You pause before reacting. You breathe before believing. And suddenly, what once overwhelmed you becomes information. Not a threat, but a signal. Not a weight, but a message. You were never meant to numb yourself to fit in. You were meant to tune yourself to remember, to realign, to reclaim the field around you as sacred ground. That's not spiritual fluff. That's energetic clarity. You are the keeper of your own frequency, and the war that made you doubt that truth was never yours to fight. So let this be your return to inner strength, to subtle power, to a way of being that doesn't apologize for feeling, for sensing, for knowing without words. You're not here to survive in silence. You're here to awaken in coherence. And now you do. The quiet revolution begins in thought. You've just crossed a threshold most people never even see, not with your feet, but with your awareness. You've stepped out of the fog, out of the noise, and into a deeper truth. One that's been with you all along, whispering beneath the static, waiting for you to listen. Because now, you know. You know that the war isn't out there. It's here, in the thoughts you repeat, in the emotions you avoid, in the frequencies you unknowingly absorb. But you also know this: you're not powerless in that war. You never were. Every thought you choose with intention becomes a signal of return. Every emotion you feel with honesty becomes a recalibration. Every breath you take with presence becomes a shield. This is not about never being drained again. It's about recognizing when it happens and remembering how to come back. It's about building a relationship with your own energy so intimate, so anchored, that even in chaos, you remain clear. You remain whole. That is the quiet revolution. That is the power of frequency. And it begins where no one can see, but everyone can feel. So if this message touched something inside you, maybe it's because you already knew, not with your mind, but with your field. Maybe you've been waiting for someone to say, "You're not crazy. You're not weak. You're in a war you didn't know you were in." And now, you see, this is not the end. It's a beginning you've always carried inside you. And if you felt that, if something clicked, even in the smallest way, leave your voice in this field. Write in the comments, "I reclaim my energetic power." That small act of claiming begins to change everything. And if you're ready to walk deeper into this path, subscribe to Echoes of the Path. This is only the first step. The next video waiting for you is more than content. It's a frequency, one designed to restore what the world tried to take. You're not alone. You never were. You were just waiting to remember.